Yadaiti ki haishia dinai mashichai yanehu mishmekatre begvura yesha yamina ela varecha ve'ela vasuse ba'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu nasker heima karu v'nafalu ba'anachnu kamnu v'nisaidat Adonai haishia hamelach yanenu v'yam karenu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Libby. I did make a mistake and I did leave out someone who did delivering today, Mrs. Sari Backman. Thank you so much, Sari, for doing that deliveries. I know it's hard after a long day of work to be delivering and it's cold and windy today. Thank you, Sari. Just a little bit of what's going to happen tonight. We're going to be discussing a letter from the Rebbe, and then we'll be answering any questions. Again, put your questions in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end of each letter. We'll also be posting the Neshei Chabad PayPal and WhatsApp, Cash App for anyone who would like to give a donation to the program if you haven't already done so. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I am going to turn our program over to Mrs. Manya Lazaroff, who is a shlucha. Well, she's originally a Monseyite, but she hasn't lived here in 22 years. But now she's a shlucha in College Station, Texas, which is 100 miles away from a kosher mikveh and a kosher pizza shop. Her and her husband and family are shluchim for on the college campus, and they mostly work with the college students and the faculty at the college. Manya has a tremendous amount to share with us, and I'm looking forward to hearing. Thanks, Manya, for joining us tonight.
Hi, everybody. It is an honor and a privilege for me personally to be joining you. In essence, really, I was asked recently by a friend, and she said, how is it possible that you're like, how do you pick and choose which events and which bring-ins or which classes? Like, how do you juggle between, your whatever you're dealing with, thank God, with your children and the college students and my extended children, all the different layers of stuff that go on. And how do you pick and choose? And I said, there's a few requirements. One is like, can I actually make a difference? And the other one is, will I actually benefit? And really, Vechom, all the Vechom programs absolutely fall under that category. So this is actually a very selfish night for me, because I would love to imagine that I'm going to carve out, hours on end to analyze and learn in depth the Igros of the Rebbe, different letters and different sichas and different talks. And what Vechom does is they create this incredible opportunity for learning and this incredible opportunity for exploring ideas in a real, tangible, practical way. And I just feel like the name Vechom is so appropriate because it literally brings and Chaim into our lives, literally brings light and warmth into our personal lives. And so for me, I really am appreciative to having this opportunity, because really what this does is it gives me an opportunity to zoom into some great ideas and really carve out time to like really get deeper into this just wealth of incredible knowledge and wisdom and practical life advice. I also found it interesting that there were 4 different themes available for tonight. And what was so fascinating is, let's say over 30 communities are participating, meaning 30 communities of women gathering together to like really take a look at what this upcoming day Shvat is, what our connection to these different the texts that in this case the Igros are. And in majority of the communities I noticed, the theme that was so prevalent was how to handle life's challenges. And clearly it's no wonder, because it's a little bit challenging, or maybe even a little bit more than a little bit challenging. So what we're going to do tonight is I hopefully will take this journey together. And Vechom prepared an incredible video, which I'm going to play for you right now, that really, I think, sets the mindset and the tone of like, what are these treasure trove that we have that are the Rebbe's letters. So I'm going to hit the share screen right here. And it's just, I know it's breathtaking. It's a really quite a treat. So here we go. And just confirm with me that you hear it. Okay, good. Can you hear?
There's sound, I hear it.
Awesome. I'm going to mute myself.
When we went on Shlichus to Italy, the Rebbe said, I hear there's a city near Milan of Chassidim that don't learn Chassidus. And we knew that the Rebbe was talking about the city of Lugano in Switzerland. Once, they wanted me to speak twice, once for the girls in the afternoon and once for the women in the evening. In the evening, I spoke for about 40 minutes, and when I finished, it was silence. And the lady said, continue, speak some more. And the minute they said that, my mind went blank.
In 1965, my parents were sent by the Lubavitcher Rebbe to take up the position of a very prestigious shul, the Oxford Synagogue Center. My father was very, very outspoken about apartheid, and to the point that the government were not happy. They used to record his sermons, and they gave them a 3-monthly visa or work permit, which had to be reviewed every 3 months. Finally, they said, that's it, you may not stay here any longer.
When I got on the train, I sat and cried the whole way through. And for 2 or 3 days, I couldn't find peace with myself. When I was in Beis Yaakov, I said there were such smart girls in my class. Maybe if the Rebbe would have sent one of those girls in my place, they could have done so much more than I. At a certain point, I sat down and I wrote a letter to the Rebbe.
My father decided that he wanted to go see the Rebbe and discuss the fact that they've got to leave anyway, so he wanted to go live in Israel. I had strong feelings that I also would love to see the family go live in Israel. So I wrote to the Rebbe. I went to my room and I had a large selection. We used to collect stationery, and I spent a long time trying to choose the most expensive, beautiful paper that I had. I was very worried that I would not write straight, and I was very worried that I would make spelling mistakes. But I didn't want my parents to sort of edit the letter. It had to be my own.
When I began working in mosquitoes, it was 1957. When the Rebbe would walk here in the morning, he would walk into the building and come into this room and take the mail, if it had already come, from the holder on the shelf right behind me, and walk with it into his room. There was one secretary that went into the Rebbe for dictation in the afternoon, every day of the week. That is Sunday through sometimes even Friday in a summer day. The lady went right to his own office and would call for it when he was ready for it. And the Rebbe found time each day to look through the mail to the extent that he could. The contents of the letters were every single conceivable aspect of life. Some people he knew, some people he didn't know. It could have been family life, it could have been science, it could have been health, it could have been education, it could be institutional, communal letters, private letters. It was a mixture. Each one got an answer according to the way whatever they wrote.
By the grace of God, 2nd of Menachem Av, 5734, Brooklyn, New York.
By the grace of God, the 18th of Adar, Bays, 5725, Brooklyn, New York.
Miss Adina Bernhard, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Mrs. Basia Garelic via Giulio Berti, Milano.
Blessings and greetings.
Blessing and greeting.
This is to acknowledge receipt of your letter of July 1st.
This is to acknowledge receipt of your letter of the 21st of Adar, Rishon.
First of all, I am gratified to note your concern, indeed profound concern, for your parents. This does not surprise me, of course, knowing your father and your upbringing.
May God grant that all the matters about which you write, including your activities in progress, as well as those to be undertaken in the future, should all be crowned with hatzlacha, and in a greater measure than expected or anticipated at first glance.
it is surely unnecessary to point out to you that when one thinks about the well-being of any person, including, above all, his inner harmony and peace, one must obviously think not in terms of the immediate days and weeks, but also how it will be in the long run.
In the literature of Chassidus, such activities are classified and explained under two categories: seeding and planting. The difference is this. In the case of seeding, as for example sowing wheat, the fruits take less time to appear than in the case of planting a tree. The reason is that in the case of the former, the results, though many times the original effort, are considerably smaller than the case of planting.
Now, with regard to your father, and knowing him, I have no doubt that he could feel in his element only in a place where he can fully utilize the knowledge which he has acquired and the qualities which God has bestowed upon him. That is, to utilize them in the fullest measure for the benefit of the many. By comparison with this, personal amenities, and I mean this also in a spiritual sense, are not the decisive factor, and perhaps no factor at all.
Similarly, in the efforts and activities of a human being, there are such that come under one category and or the other. If therefore it sometimes takes longer for the efforts to come to fruition, this is no reason for discouragement.
On the basis of what has been said above, supported by what you and all the other members of the family have seen of your father's Hatzlacha, not only in your city, but South Africa as a whole, you will surely realize without any shadow of a doubt that your father will feel in his element and be truly happy if he continues his present situation in your country.
It would appear as if you have doubts as to whether the one who gave you the assignment had made a wise choice. Surely you do not entertain such a thought, though in any case I wouldn't consider it in any personal way as far as I am concerned.
To return to you, I of course inquired from your father about your activities, as well as about those of the other children in the spreading of Yiddishkeit. May God grant that you and each and all of you shall go from strength to strength in accordance with the saying of our sages. He who has 100 desires 200, and having achieved 200 desires 400.
However, if you are certain that the one who gave you the assignment has not made a mistake, then you should continue your work with certainty and confidence, and with God's help, you will succeed.
I trust that you have heard about the 5 mitzvah campaigns which I have been urging recently, also pointing out that Jewish daughters and women have their part in these activities, and a very important part. I am confident that you and your friends are taking an active part in them.
With blessings,
M. Schneerson.
When Moshe Rabbeinu was told that he was going to pass on, and pleaded with the Eibishter that he should select the person instead who can deal with the can deal with the spirit of each and every individual. That's quite a job. There are millions of people in the world. How do you deal with each one according to their particular spirit? Moshe Rabbeinu had that ability. I'm sure God fulfilled his request and gave it to Yeshua. And I can't think of anyone in the world today, current events, who had that spirit like we witnessed, and I witnessed firsthand in the Rebbe's response.
To me, the real answer was that I was right. I am only a child. I had turned 13, but the Rebbe did not talk down to me. This is somebody who respects me and cares about me. It was a reciprocation of what I had said, okay, I'm reaching out. I'm reaching out. I'm making you my Rebbe. I want that. I want you in my life. And I included the Rebbe in my life. And the Rebbe was saying, right, now I am including you in my life.
when the Rebbe writes you a letter, and it signs his name. It's addressed to you, and it's signed by the Rebbe. And even sometimes in the letter, as in this letter, there's a little, with ink, the Rebbe changes a word or fixes a word or something. It's so personal. It's like holding the Rebbe in your hands. At least that's what it feels like to me. It answers directly to what you need without any shyness, and it's so full of love. He comes through with every word. Can you imagine? He's talking to me. He's talking to me.
And tens of thousands of letters, 32 volumes that have already been printed, covers the whole kaleidoscope of life. It's a pleasure just to read through it. The beautiful expressions, letter after letter, volume after volume, then start over again. It is so soothing and calming. It's very wise counsel, and usually different than you might expect. With the Rebbe's insight and his genius expressed in those letters.
As you see from that absolutely breathtaking video, prepared with so much, I mean, it's tremendous to really see. We only heard from 2 participants, 2 people who received that love, the care from the Rebbe. And yet there are thousands and thousands and thousands. Each letter is a story. Each story, there's a person, there's a whole web, a whole life connected to these beautiful and incredible, incredible letters. There's so many stories. The USPS would say the address that got the most mail in the United States was 770 after the White House. So the gamut of ideas and issues and themes and love and dedication, when you study the letters, tonight we're going to kind of zoom into 4. But each one of these letters, if we could spend a whole night on one of them. And there's so much more on the subject matter. And like I said before, the whole theme, when life isn't perfect, it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer, because really, in essence, life isn't perfect. You know, often I'm bringing or schmoozing with teenagers, and they're saying about their issues. And I say, you have issues? Awesome. You're alive. Things aren't perfect. Wonderful. You're in this world. So we have to remember that it's just a part of the human experience and a part of life. Now, obviously, this is easy when it comes to our own challenges. God forbid to ever look at someone else's challenges. Oh, it's a part of life and you're totally fine. Even when it's my college student marching in to tell me how depressed they are because their dog may or may not have cancer and it may or may not be terminal, their puppy. I have to remind myself that that's their reality. And that's their significant moment or milestone or mind frame and relationship. So obviously, with an intense sensitivity to someone else's reality and someone else's challenges, and never to belittle that, But these letters give us a mindset and can allow us to create a shift within how we see the challenges that will come our way. And obviously, we always ask Hashem not to send challenges, and we ask for revealed good. But a part of the story in life is the ups and downs, right? We all know that. Just take the last, 9 months. Not simple for anyone, anywhere in the entire world. We certainly can see that the challenges are a part of the story. The beauty of these letters is the absolute mindset shift that is created, but we have to also couple that with a really, really important, I'm going to say disclaimer, it's not the right word, but a really important statement that God forbid should we go through challenges alone, ever. If God forbid someone breaks a foot, they're not going to hesitate to run to a orthopedist and get it fixed, to get physical therapy. There will be no shame and no stigma. If someone is suffering, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's real heavy life challenges with chinuch of our children, whatever health issues, we always go, that was the Rebbe's advice, always go to an expert in the field. So certainly while these letters are incredibly powerful and useful to transform our mindset, we still always must make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success, whether it's a mashpia that we have, professional help, medication. I think like the age of stigma is over. We need to take care of the most important thing, ourselves, our families, our communities. So I think that that's a really important thing, because sometimes when you can have all this wonderful inspiration about seeing our challenges differently, then it leaves someone feeling like, wait, but this challenge is big and a letter is not going to solve it. No, a letter is not going to solve it, but a letter will give you a mindset and a perspective and a lens to see something through. And that shift is tremendous. That shift is a gift we have. And obviously what we'll notice throughout all of these letters, the Rebbe is constantly a recurring theme to stay connected, to keep learning, because the more we learn, the more we are literally nourishing. I always say self-care is so in, and this one's on this diet or that diet, or, this one has their wheatgrass shots and their vitamin B and what goes to this doctor or this physical therapist, all important. But for us as Yidden with the neshama, our vitamin B shot for our neshama or wheatgrass shot, whatever you want to call it, it's Torah, it's Chassidus. And so the more we learn and the more we immerse ourselves and the more we stay connected, the more we literally can tap into these tools that are so powerful. So each of these letters contains amazing tools, really, really, truly perspective shifts. And we're going to jump into 4. And I know many of you either have the PDF version via email or you got those packages delivered. How incredible. I think there were even treats in the bag. I don't know, that's pretty neat. No one's bringing treats to my door, right? So I hope you're enjoying them at least. And if you, what I would really, really encourage, because we would not have time to read every single letter in depth, but take the time between now, Shabbos, Shvat, whatever it is. Maybe it's Shabbos when things are a little settled, not between now and Shabbos, whenever you could carve out a little bit of time, or maybe it's one letter a night, and really read through them. Because the truth is, each one has, you can unpack so many life gems from these letters. So the letters that are here, letter number 1, which you should have in front of you. I hope you have it if you have a chance to look at it. It's really interesting to see who the Rebbe is addressing and understand what it is, what the Rebbe's points are. So if you have the booklet, great. If you don't, I'm sure you can get the PDF emailed to you afterwards. It's really, it's something that should be put on the shelf, with your Sfarim. It's that practical that you can pull it out and look at it again. So interesting is the Rebbe starts off by addressing this person and really kind of saying what we said before, that ultimately Hashem opposes challenges upon us, right? No one says, hey, excuse me, can you sign me up for one global pandemic? I'd love to see how that feels. No one does. No one says, oh, really? I really want a kid who's going to really challenge me. We all know those kids that push the buttons and, challenge us beyond what we think we're capable of dealing with. No one says, sign me up for this challenge. But Hashem chooses our challenges. And Hashem chooses what he has planned for us. And what's so fascinating is, yes, it can feel imposed. And at the end of the day, that it can lead us to feeling really stressed. And I get why so many of the communities chose to discuss this. We certainly all understand what stress is, right? And at the end of the day, but the Rebbe goes on to explain from time to time. I'm going to read some of the quotes because there's so much here. Again, like it would be amazing to like just sit bechavrasa and like read these letters in depth. We're not going to do that, but rather from time to time, a person needs to remind oneself that his life wasn't given to him as a result of his choosing. Everything Hashem does is for the good. This is so fascinating because sometimes we look at our lives, we look at our circumstances. I talk to a lot of teenagers, their mother, this, their teacher, that, their principal, this, everyone else, nabach, our whole life, there's a lot of stuff. Hashem chose that for us. We did not choose it, but really it is indeed for the good. And the Rebbe goes on to say that you can look at people who've had really challenging lives. And in this letter, the Rebbe refers to Rambam. Rambam had a really challenging life, right? Not simple at all. As a matter of fact, the Rebbe says a life of hardship, a life of struggles, a life of suffering. Those are pretty strong adjectives, right? And tragedy. And yet, nevertheless, Rambam maintained an optimistic outlook on life. And we know that not only did Rambam maintain an optimistic outlook on life, but Rambam's influence in 2021 in Tafshin Pei Aleph. I mean, we are learning Rambam. Rambam has the contribution that Rambam made, despite all those challenges, are incredible. And I was reading, I did a little bit of a book club with some of my students' mothers, and we were discussing the book Positivity Bias. And it's so fascinating because I think it's even in the introduction. The Rabbi Beryl Yunik was saying that if you look at the Rebbe's life, the Rebbe did not have an easy life. World War I, World War II, his parents exiled, his father-in-law imprisoned, childlessness, coming to in a country, escaping the Holocaust, really siblings passing away, really not a simple life. And the Rebbe told Beryl Yunik, I work on remaining positive daily. That is such a mind-boggling thing because certainly we can go on end, from today till tomorrow and discuss all the ways the Rebbe really looked at things with a complete positive perspective. To the extent that the Rebbe wouldn't even say Jews that are far, Jews that don't live close or that are not close, right? So careful, so nuanced, the details of the words used, always to remain completely positive. And the Rebbe goes on to say this is an attitude. Because ultimately, like we said, we can't control the challenges, but certainly we can control our attitude. And ultimately, the more we learn Chassidus, what does Chassidus teach us? Joy, simcha. Simcha is an incredible place in how simcha sachayim, the energy in the home. I remember I had a Friday, and it was one of those Fridays. I don't know if you ever had these Fridays. Maybe it doesn't happen in your house, but it happens sometimes in mine, where it's like, I'm barking at everyone because I had not enough sleep and the to-do list is way too long and I'm just on edge. And I remember one of my kids just looked at me and said, you're in a bad mood. And I was like, I am not in a bad mood. Like as I'm yelling at the kid that I'm not in a bad mood, you understand what was going on here, right? So the kid's like, yeah, you're in a very bad mood. And I just was like, okay, there's so many parenting guidelines out there, but I utilize the parenting tool of timeout. But in this case, it was for me, not the child. And I had to shift and say, okay, hey, who's the adult here? Check in with yourself. What's the energy in the home? Do you want joy in your home? Do you want Friday to be like this stressful, resentful, toxic day? Or do you want it to be like Yom Tif and Simcha? And I to tell you, my Pesach surprise is not my favorite Yom Tif, but somehow the joy that we really work to create, the kids love Pesach. I'm like, how did this happen? But I think that our attitude, our mindset, creates massive shifts. And it's really everything that happens in our life, right? And the Rebbe says it's especially relevant in matters beyond our control. Teres Chassidus teaches us to look for positive and redeeming elements, even from material perspective, that outlook drastically reduces any negative emotions. Any negative emotions can be drastically reduced by changing our perspective. You ever heard a day, and again, maybe this never happened to any one of you, where either a child, a sibling, a spouse was the worst person in the world for that day, and everything they did just did not work and drove you crazy. And then the next day they were the best person in the world. Well, the person didn't have a lobotomy and change. It's our perspective that shifts. And really the power of reclaiming our perspective and seeing things in the positive way and not living with a victim mentality and understanding that everything Hashem does is in fact for the good. And the Rebbe is basically saying that it's especially for things that are beyond our control. That's when we let go. And I think sometimes for us as women, we like things to run a certain way, whether it's our home, whether it's our family, whether it's the way we think our children should be. You know, like there's like the family portrait moment where like you get one normal picture, but really we all know what happened. There was a fight before, a fight after, this one didn't want to, this one didn't want. We all know maybe what that looks like or has looked like. And you get that one snap. We all have like our perception of what it should be. And then there's things that are beyond our expectations. There are things that are beyond our control, like most of life, right? There's a lot we can control. So while we're not going to be able to control what comes our way, we are going to be able to control how we shift and perceive things. And I remember reading a different letter that's actually not included in here, but I'm going to mention one concept where the Rebbe was saying that everything is a choice. Everything is a mix of good and bad. We choose how we see it. And the Rebbe gives an example that Adam Harishon was, according to some midrashim, he was an ingrate. In Gan Eden, you can't get a better setup, right? Great house, great food, great everything. And he doesn't appreciate. He wants to eat from what he's not supposed to eat from. And the Rebbe says, and compared to people in the Holocaust, sitting, thanking Hashem for what they had in barracks in Germany. What is the difference? The mindset. And so I think that we have to, for sure, when we're in a situation, again, not for someone else, again, when somebody comes in and tries to support my hand, oh, honey, just change your mindset, you'll be fine. No, there has to be sympathy. You know, you have to help a person, maybe guidance. But when we can do that for ourselves, we can also model that for others in our lives. Can we shift our perspective? But what's so interesting as the Rebbe goes through this first letter, the Rebbe goes on to say that really, it's very, I'm not trying to like talk down at you. I'm not trying to rebuke you, chas v'shalom, right? It's even difficult for me to write what I wrote above because of what you went through. Like I know what you just went through. You clearly poured out your heart to me. But I really want to direct you to the perspective that comes from Torah. And the Rebbe writes here, Torah which will help lighten your load and calm your spirit. This is something that we'll see again through all the letters, that at the end of the day, the more we plug in, the more there's, you know, we say Torah is Hashem's will and Hashem's wisdom, right? We say, what else do we say? We say Torah is our guide. But Torah also brings light into our lives. And Torah says this even more so. So I think as Chassidim, we have a wealth of incredible tools really at our fingertips, but we got to plug in. Right? I always say, like, if I put my phone in, you know, put it in the plug, but I didn't put the plug into the wall, like I'm not plugging in, I'm not receiving the energy I need. So for us, I feel like when we're in like a slump or when we're not there, we just sometimes need to just realign, replug in, reconnect to Torah, because really the more we do, we can let go. We can lighten our burden. We can be calmer. We can go through life with a more inhale or exhale, you know, we just really understand these big ideas. But what's interesting is then the Rebbe goes on at the end, the closing of this letter, and the Rebbe says on, really, I want you to notify me about changes with this situation, especially when you have good news. To many of the ideas that you mentioned. And I think it's so interesting as Chassidim, a lot of times when there's a crisis, we know dial the aisle right upon, but really, we have to give nachas too. We have to give good news. We have to share good news too. And I think that's but there's also this very beautiful, hopeful tone that the Rebbe is writing in the letter. There will be good news. They will change. So when we tap into shifting our perspective, seeing things, you know, differently, a mindset shift, and we understand how we can, in fact, you know, really perceive our reality, not from this like, you know, very unhealthy place, but from this place of like, Hashem gave this to me, and I can see this properly, then what we do is we actually can transform the reality of what we're experiencing. And really, this is the lens of Torah. This is the lens that Chassidus gives us, which is so important. It's called positive reframing, right? We know about this. How can I look at this situation? You know, when you go to PTA and they say your child is very spirited, You know what that means. Climbing the walls, a little bit chutzpahdik around the edges. Very curious. You know what that means. So just like a Mora is going to reframe it for us. I always would tell my kids, teachers, I'm like, just tell it to me straight. You don't have to like make it fluffy. Like, it's fine. I get it. I get they're humans. They're going to have ups and downs, right? But I think for us, we can do that for our situations. We could do that even when we look at a child struggling with a situation. Can I reframe how they're going, what they're going through? Can I try to see positive in it? Because the energy of shifting to a positive mindset actually can transform a reality. In 1969, the first African-American woman was voted into Congress. A very famous story. Her name was Shirley Chisholm. She's from Brooklyn, right? And let's just say this, it describes as the white Southern leadership was not so thrilled with her new role, so they were going to put her in her place. I'm not making that words up. Those were her words with her discussion about this. And so they assigned her the Department of Agriculture. And the quote, the headline of the newspaper was like, does the tree grow in Brooklyn? Like, really? You gave this lady, who's the first African-American woman to make it to Congress in 1969, you're really putting her in charge of the agriculture? And she was really depressed. She was down. She was really like, it weighed on her. Suddenly she gets a phone call from the Rebbe's secretariat that the Rebbe wants to meet with her. She knew who the Rebbe was. She was in his district. She ended up going to the Rebbe. She came into the Rebbe and the Rebbe said, I heard you're disappointed. She was not just disappointed. Like, she was so broken. I'm so upset. I'm so insulted. Like, she knew what this, like, making her in charge of agriculture was. She was in Brooklyn. What did she know about farmers? And the Rebbe said to her, in America, there's a surplus of food. Farmers have too much food. In Brooklyn, there are mothers that can't feed their children. Find a solution. What an incredible opportunity you have. And sure enough, day one in Congress, she meets a senator who had dealt with farmers and agriculture. And what happens? She creates WIC and food stamps. What's now we know as WIC and food stamps. Then it wasn't, but it morphed into that. And at her retirement, she said, if a mother in Brooklyn has food for her baby, it's because there was a wise rabbi who taught me how to see something differently. That's tremendous. That's the mindset shift that we can have. Yeah, it was pretty depressing for her. But look at the impact that moment, that challenge had. She obviously also had to be receptive to the Rebbe's words, right? So the more we plug in, the more we tap in, the more we're receptive, the more we're open, there's such tremendous treasures to help us shift how we see our lives. So I want to pause, and I would love to discuss if there's any thoughts on letter number 1 that anyone wants to jump in on, or questions. I know, Tova, you said you would monitor for any questions specifically related. Go ahead. Is there anything that you see?
There's nothing in the chat box.
Okay. Should we just keep going?
If someone wants to be unmuted, you know how to do the thing where you raise your hand.
Have the power to unmute. Go for it if you'd like. Okay. The second letter, I find, again, each one has a tool. Like, each one is just so, like, I feel like we're not even doing it justice, but hopefully we'll be able to walk away with something practical. But I think that this letter also is tremendous, because really in the second letter, the Rebbe is really addressing to someone who says, all my life is no good. No good has befallen me. Like, poor me, massive pity party, nothing's working well. It's not going. And then he asks or he or she is asking at the end of this letter that I guess it's a he, asking for a bracha for his wife and his children. So the Rebbe says, whoa, I see a massive contradiction here. There's a big problem here. The Rebbe goes on to say that really hundreds and thousands of people have davened for what? For children. And yet, every day, and you are blessed with children. Yeah, are kids chaotic? Yeah. Do we get our white hair from them? Absolutely, yeah. Maybe a few wrinkles, I don't know, maybe whatever it is. Kids can be a lot, but what a bracha. You have children. You have wealth. And the Rebbe says that it doesn't make sense that you're so focused on the health that isn't right and the money that isn't right. You're not really recognizing having gratitude for what you do have in your life. And the Rebbe goes on to say that maybe because you're not actually appreciating what you do have, that your failure to appreciate Hashem's blessing, recognize the good from above. Open your eyes, see your situation in light, with a light perspective. And what we have to understand is that ultimately, yes, of course, children are joy, but of course, children are a lot. They're a lot, as we say here in College Station, they're a lot of extra, right? But Baruch Hashem, what joy, what incredible gifts you have. I remember my youngest are triplets, and they're 11. And I remember wherever I would go with them, the looks of like, oh, Nebach, poor you. Like almost like I should be like people, oh, like you need to be depressed. I'm like, we got a jackpot. Like, what are you talking about? This is like the biggest gift. And people are like, oh God, it's the South. So it's Texas. So God should bless you. Like, and I'm like, no, he already has. These are my gifts. They're tremendous. And I think that when our children feel that we see them as a joy, we see them as a gift, not a burden. I speak to a lot of teenagers, a lot of their frustration is that they think adults think they're just a pain and just like get through your teenage years, survive and be decent, and like, we'll talk to you on the other side. They are a gift. They are our treasure. And the Rebbe goes on in this letter and says that when we shift to see our life with joy, with gratitude, and not just, okay, well, I'm so grateful, because we all know when someone's like, okay, yeah, thanks. And someone's like, wow, thank you. Right? Authentic gratitude, real, genuine gratitude, a true, and the Rebbe goes to say, true inner joy, which we all know it's great to be grateful. It's easy to smile. It's a lot that our insides, that I truly feel inner joy, that takes deep work. But the Rebbe points out that really it's a pipeline for brachos. So we all want brachos. We all want good in our life. We want parnasa, we want health, we want it all. Sure, go for it. Ask the Eibishter for everything. But what if the tool is and the key is in our hand? What if that pipeline can be opened by shifting our perspective to joyous one? And the Rebbe says the situation that you're looking at as stressful, your stress is unnecessary. That deep work of focusing on that inner joy, and not a checklist joy, right? But that deep work, a sincere thank you to the Eibishter. And the Rebbe goes on to say, not just being grateful, oh, I'm so grateful for this, grateful for that, but expressing that gratitude, right? You ever had someone maybe do something really nice for you? I don't know, maybe a spouse did something nice and you think, oh, that was so thoughtful. Or I don't know, for me, my husband's really good at remembering like, oh, this one's ran out of this toothpaste and that one was running low on lens solution. He's good at that, right? And sometimes I'll look at, wow, my lens solution like magically replenished itself. Like I could think thank you, but he has no clue I actually feel grateful unless I express it. So I always say, when you feel gratitude towards someone, don't hold it in. Express it. Gratitude to our children, gratitude to people that we're surrounded with for the day-to-day things, because the more and actually this is proven psychologically, proven neurologically, the more we focus on gratitude and not just here, the more we verbally express it, the more it actually affects us. Because really gratitude leads to making us feel happy and grateful for what we have. I notice students who, the classic American 2021 college student, when I get to college and when I get to grad school and when I have a boyfriend and when I have my new phone and when I have this and when I have this, then I'll be happy, then I'll be happy, then when I get this internship, then I'll be happy. And it's really work, because really a vast majority of American secular college students, I think it's around 72% are on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. That's really high. So something's not working. This pursuit of happiness isn't working. So obviously there needs to be a shift, because I noticed after Hurricane Harvey, we brought students to Houston to clean up for weeks on end. And I remember the students who were affected so deeply by that. They said, when I drove by all the contents of someone's life, one of our students himself lost everything in his home. And when the students helped him peel away every single thing, not a photo was left. They said, whoa, I'm taking my little apartment in college for granted. But really, when we focus on what we do have, there is so much we do have. And we know psychologists are talking about positivity and gratitude journals. It's part of our life. We start our day with Maidani, right? So the Rebbe is basically saying this, let us focus on the good. How are you saying your life is miserable and then asking for a bracha for your wife and children? It doesn't make sense. You already have so much. Shift the perspective. and express it. Thank Hashem, because it opens pipelines for brachos. That's a pretty big idea. It's like if we could just walk away with one idea from each of these letters, there really are like powerful in our arsenal to handle life. Like life throws a lot at us, but this is really good stuff that we have and we're blessed to have. That's the truth. Any questions, thoughts, ideas, follow-ups to letter number 2? And again, I really am encouraging everyone to like zoom in and read these in depth because we're like skimming the surface of them and they're so rich. Anyone else have any main thoughts or ideas before we jump on to letter number 3?
It was so interesting. Today, someone was discussing an issue she had with me, and she was like saying it like, I gave in. I said, you didn't give in. Reframe, refocus. Before I even looked at the letter, I said, reframe, refocus. How can we call this?
Yeah.
You did something for Shalom. You know, I was working with her. What words can we use so you're not so bitter about what you did, and do it happily? Reframe, refocus. I kept saying it to her over and over.
It's so interesting you said that, because I agree so much with you that so much is in here. Like, what's my narrative? What's my storyline? What meaning have I attached to this experience? Because if that person saw that experience, right, as I gave in instead of my goal was bigger. There's a line I once heard that really resonated with me. And I feel like it's really applicable in what you just mentioned, that sometimes when we're saying no to one thing, we're actually saying yes to something higher. So when that person said no to, or said, no, I'm gonna, compromise, they're actually saying yes to Shalom. So we have to think of like what areas in our life that we have that aren't working, but what are we saying yes to? And that's a really big idea. It's not easy, but it's certainly worth practicing those muscles, because the truth is our brain neurologically is hardwired to hold on to negativity. And it's part of how Hashem created us. We could have a whole conversation about negativity bias, about the missing tile syndrome. There's a lot of neurological research on this, psychological research on this, but ultimately, when we not just focus on gratitude, but we actually verbally articulate it. There is a very famous psychologist who did the most highly attended study at Harvard University was on gratitude, on happiness and gratitude. And his conclusion was, he spent 10 years doing research, very well known. And his conclusion was, gratitude makes you happy, but it's not good enough to be grateful. You should express your gratitude specifically first thing in the morning when your brain is the most aligned for it. We've been doing this for quite a while. We've been expressing gratitude first thing in the morning, right when we wake up, and it frames our day. It shifts things. So it's really powerful to remember the tools that are at our disposal. While there's great self-help books and podcasts out there, like we have Chassidus, we have Torah, we got it. It's ours. So I just want to kind of focus, moving on to the third letter. I think it also like introduces like an interesting new tool. So the third letter is really addressing to someone who's struggling financially. And I think a lot of people could probably relate to this reality, that even if, money is a thing and it goes up and down, and sometimes there's more and sometimes there's less, and they're actually talking to this person like, you're struggling in your business, you're struggling with your debt, and really it's weakened you. And not only weakened you, but it's also weakened your trust in Hashem. But then the Rebbe takes a very interesting, like, kind of perspective that really everything depends on bitachon, which is trust, right? A man's trust is the measuring stick of the extent to which his material affairs are bound and fused with his creator. This is so powerful. If this fusion is complete, it is certainly impossible for anything to be lacking. There's no concept in Shemayim of lacking, right? So when we look, what does this mean? Is that when our bitachon is not, when we attach our bitachon to all our physical matter, financial, whatever it's going on, in this case, it was financial and debt. When we actually attach our bitachon to this idea, then really we're attaching our materialism to the Eibishter. There's no better silent partner than the Eibishter. So when we're struggling with our things, if we think it's all us, my business decisions, my this, my that, yeah, you're right, you should be depressed. It's overwhelming, it's a burden. But when I attach my financial my statement's attached to the Eibusher because that's where it all comes from. Guess what? It works out. Hashem makes sure we have food on the table. It's going to be okay. And what's amazing is that really that when we fortify, just looking at the next words of the Rebbe saying, when we fortify our trust in Hashem to the greatest extent possible. Yes, of course, do your part, toil on, work, make a keli, go to work, look for a job, find new opportunities. Yes, 100%. But we need to fortify trust in Hashem. And in truth, the truth is that we're obviously asking, as the Rebbe goes on to say, B'tayv hanira v'hanigla. We want revealed, like obvious, revealed good. However, that kind of good that is readily recognizable as such without the need to resort to all sorts of theological explanations. But what we know is that when we have that, when we are believing Jews, we are maminim. Whether we like it or not, it's in our DNA. We got it in our system. Okay, we have to tap into it. Okay, we have to strengthen it. But what happens here is that we actually then draw down brachas to the physical world. And nature, the natural order of things, won't be so affected, right? Meaning, trust in Hashem in all our challenges, in this case, the financial ones, really is our own metrics, metrics. It's our own measuring stick, because we have to acknowledge that Hashem is good. And you know what's so interesting in this letter where this man is talking about his financial struggles? What is the Rebbe talking about it? If you will only fortify your trust, you will immediately see changes. And then the Rebbe goes on to say, and give tzedakah. Seems so counterintuitive. I'm coming to you and telling you I don't have enough money, and you're telling me, yeah, you should maybe give some away. Why? When we're giving away, we're saying, I'm partnering with the Eibusher. My finances are connected to the Eibusher. That's what Hashem wants of me with my whatever's in my bank account, right? We always have the ability to give to others. So how we see ourselves, and when we understand that even though it seems counterintuitive to take out of our bank account, right? What we need to remember is we have to have trust in Hashem. And at the end of the day, Hashem has a plan for us in essence, and that through trusting in Hashem, in essence, we bind our reality is to an energy and a source that's beyond us, the Eibusher. Hashem doesn't have a shortage of money. So when we put that, we send that upwards, we're really connecting. And then it will allow us that the challenges that we do face could take their place and settle into a healthy place. So trust in this case is really, really, really a powerful reality. And even if it feels challenging to let go, because it's not easy to let go. It's not easy, because at the end of the day, the mortgage needs to be paid and the tuition needs to be paid and food needs to be on the table, and kids need also wear clothing, and they tend to grow, and whether not always at the convenient time, but at the end of the day, we have to remember that this bitachon that we have, that it will be good. It's like takes that worry and it says, Hashem, you're my partner in my gashmias. And again, like I said, no better silent partner. I will say that on shluchus, I feel like there is no guarantee and there is no paycheck, and I feel like we're so keenly aware of Hashem's hand in our life that it really I can probably have just a conversation about these moments where Hashem just showed us from above that someone accidentally unmuted. I'm not sure. Ooh, let me just check.
No, it's my daughter talking.
It's okay. Sorry, it's all good. So really when we tap in higher, what we're saying, and on shluchas, I see this very frequently, that somehow these things fall into place. And it's a certain level of letting go. Like, Hashem, this is not my Chabad, this is yours. Do you want the students to be fed? Great. So please, let's figure out how to make this happen. And of course, it doesn't mean we don't have to work hard and do our part. We all have to. We're living in the physical world. But again, connect upward. And then the partner in my gashmias is the Eibusher. And that is a very, 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 very powerful one. I mean, I just find this one it's not always intellectual and it's not emotional. It's above that, because trusting in Hashem sometimes, in this case, it is above that. It's not intellectual. And then it starts, though, working within and strengthening that. Any questions, thoughts, or ideas? Because I know these are big. Each one is its own class or discussion. And I feel like we're zooming through them pretty quickly. And yet it is a challenge. Does anyone want to share any thoughts on this?
Yeah, just a quick thing.
Yes.
I feel like feel like the second letter actually helps the idea in the third letter. The more we thank Hashem, we recognize his hand in our life, which makes it easier to trust him, that just like he helped us with everything that he has given us, I think that helps us a lot and then of course we'll Hashem have what we want from him, and we also are able to ask in a productive way what we want and not in a kvetchy,
I may have been guilty of once or twice kvetching to the Eibishter. I feel like I take that. If like he's my father, then like I'll kvetch to my father too. So, but I understand what you're saying in a productive manner. I like that idea that they're really, all of these ideas are interconnected, right? None of them are a standalone. And we're only scratching the surface. We're only learning 4 out of thousands and thousands of letters, right?
Right.
And so I agree with you full-heartedly that each one of these, like, also if we appreciate what we have, sometimes what we think we need or whatever our expectations, like there are measuring sticks of what we think it is, And I think with like letting go and letting Hashem like steer the ship, sometimes it's really hard for us, but I think I guess really when you're living in middle of nowhere and really in middle of nowhere, between us and the closest, whatever pizza shop's 100 miles on a lot of cows. Like you keep driving and then there's this little mini city and we're not dealing with adults that are like, sending salaries, their salaries or contributions. Their parents may know about us, may not their parents always don't appreciate Chabad, they're a little worried that what's going to happen to the child. God forbid he becomes, wears a yarmulke, beard, whatever. But point being that we have seen so often firsthand, like where there were situations where we were really up against the wall and then like someone called out like, oh, like a bill came in, it was that or the mortgage. And then someone called and said, hey, randomly from a different state, just charged my card $1,800 and the bill was exactly, $1,795. And there were things like that where like, just so clearly that it's so much bigger than us. And I think that it's for all of us in every situation. And we got to remember that these ideas are very much like interconnected in a real way. So I want to move on to the fourth letter just because I'm conscious of the time and I know, unless someone else wants to jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There is one more thing in letter number 2 that is.
I can't see who's speaking. Are you on camera or not? Sorry.
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure if you are there, I could see your face, but go ahead.
Yeah. I just see here, like in letter number 2, that the Rebbe is writing in a very sharp way. That when a person does not recognize the good in his life in such an extreme way, the Rebbe is writing, no wonder, mahapele, no wonder that he doesn't see bracha in other inyanim. Means it's not just that, oh, you better be, but you are looking for other inyanim to be successful, and you cannot really be successful if you don't even recognize the good that you already have. And I never saw such a terminology, like such a way of the Rebbe describing. It's like almost Musar, giving him rebuke about it. So I find it very interesting.
It is definitely interesting. And I think that ultimately what the Rebbe is also pointing out to this person is that's your lens of seeing your life. It's like, when you walk into your house and you're like, why is it so dark? And you realize you haven't lifted your sunglasses. They're like still down here. That ever happened to you, right? The lens that we see things through affects everything. So if you can't see your children and your wife as a bracha, no wonder you can't see everything else as a bracha too, right? There's a recurring pattern here, right? So I do agree that it's very strong. And obviously the Rebbe knew who he was talking to and what their capacity to hear. And actually, if you compare it to letter number 4, where the Rebbe is writing to a teenager, it's
sorry,
very...
Manya, I'm sorry. Someone posted a comment and a question. I just want to read it.
Yeah.
You could address it maybe until we get to before we get
sure,
to
go ahead. Just can you read it? Go ahead.
Yeah, it says, when the Rebbe says, I firmly hope that if you will only fortify your trust, you will immediately see a change. What does the Rebbe mean by I hope? Is this not a confirmed thing?
So here it is. I think, first of all, I would love to pretend like I have a crystal ball and know exactly what the Rebbe meant when he said those words, but I don't. What I will say is that ultimately, the Rebbe is trying to create a shift within this person to really trust in Hashem is not an easy thing. It requires deep, deep work. And so God willing, you'll immediately see change. I just wonder where exactly the person's reading. Which was this letter number 2 or 3? I'm sorry.
It doesn't say.
Okay.
If-
Okay. Well,
if
I
Devari-
think ultimately,
yeah, Devari, someone Devari posted the
Devari,
question.
you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
It's in the third letter, the last.
Yes. Okay.
I didn't ask the question, but I'm saying I see it in the last paragraph of the third letter. I firmly.
Letter number 3.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
she's saying letter
maternal
number. She said
algebra-
letter 3.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I ultimately, I guess we're saying is that ultimately the Rebbe does hope this person can see what they can do. Like we can try, you ever had, I mean, let me use this analogy and it may not be a perfect one, but you ever had someone who you knew, let's say they had potential within them and they couldn't see it. They couldn't get beyond it. They're stuck. They're so stuck. Sometimes we see it in someone, we see that there's so much potential and you can give them very clear advice, but at the end of the day, like you really hope that they can tap in and find it. So is there a guarantee that everything's going to work out? The person has to do this deep work. I mean, the Rebbe really lays out some pretty strong word that like clearly the person's struggling with trust. So is it that the Rebbe is not giving a guarantee? I don't know if that's exactly what the wording is saying. I think it's really just explaining that at the end of the day, it's crucial for us when we're struggling in this area to recognize where we can control and what we can do about it. So it's like, I hope that's what I would think. I'm not certain. And I think if someone else wants to jump in with their thoughts.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go for it. Oh, of
Hi,
course.
so I'm just saying what I'm
Who's
hearing.
speaking? Sorry, it's so hard. I don't see faces. It's a little disconcerting.
I'm sorry, my camera from this computer doesn't work.
No worries.
But so just I feel like what the Rebbe's may be saying, I mean, obviously we want it to be completely open and revealed good.
Yeah.
But when a person fortifies themselves in trust and things don't necessarily change from 1 minute to the next, I think it's more of like Amuna and Bitachon brings Geula, so that you're living in Geula even though you're not really out of your situation. So you're living in a place of just really, really in Hashem's
Letting
hands
go.
and knowing that it's for the good and feeling more relaxed and relieved. And even though it's not going to be always at all times, but for the most part, you just keep strengthening yourself. So that's how you're basically, like you keep saying, the frame of mind is what,
Shapes things. Yeah, I love what you mentioned, that even if you haven't arrived there yet, or even if you're there temporarily and things can go backwards, like things are fluid. Life is fluid, right? Nothing is guaranteed, and there's ups and downs, and may have good days or bad days or good months, quarterly income. I don't know what this, this financial struggle a person's going through, and everything's gonna have ups and downs, but the mindset and the emunah and the bitachon, I think I agree with you. The interplay is very important here. And that, yeah, go for it. Jump in. This is for Reagan. I wish we were like sitting around the same table, by the way.
One thing that my sister told me once, and it's an amazing tip. Sometimes I'm stuck in the victimhood and negativity. Feels good. It feels really good.
Comfortable.
You just want everybody to say, you're totally right. You deserve to be a victim. No, anyways, one tip that really, really works is to thank Hashem for the negative thing that you have right now. Thank you, Hashem, for, that my baby just spilled the whole folded huge piles all over my bed, all over the floor. Thank you, Hashem. That automatically reminds me, oh, it must be good because Hashem gave it to me. It's such a simple thing and it works.
Okay,
you're
saying it's simple. I actually don't think that's so simple. So kudos to you
but
for
the
even
saying,
thinking that it's simple.
I mean, it's simple.
You're saying it's easy.
I'm very good at being victim. I'm really good at it.
We love a pity party.
And literally every time I say, thank you. Let's say I lost $200. Thank you, Hashem, that I lost this $200. It's automatic. Try it out.
I'm taking notes.
If I could do it, anybody could do it.
No, I'm taking feedback, but I do think what you said that really stuck with me, that resonated with me, is first of all, it's like, even if you're going through the motions, it's going to, and it's not deep, because the letter before the Rebbe talks about it, like it has to be really like deep work, right? Like inner joy. You're not inner joy that the laundry pile's all over the floor, right? Like unless you're not, I mean, God bless you if that's your way of navigating, like hats off to you. But it sounds like you're saying when I go through the motions, it really like pushes me to see it differently. And I think that I really respect that tremendously. But I really do also love what you said. Is sometimes we have to ask ourselves, like, am I just wallowing for the sake of wallowing because it's just a comfortable place to be right now? I want to be miserable. You know, sometimes I see a kid, they want to be cranky. They don't want solutions. They just want to be miserable. You know, the pity party is sometimes a fun place, you know, to wallow in. But I agree with you. If you want to get past it, you could see things differently. But I do think that it's a pretty high level to try to see things in the moment that way. And it's, you know, it's nice to hear different people's strategies of how to get there. So thank you for taking the time to unmute yourself and share that idea. I really appreciate it.
Could I share something?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
About what Mushki Silverstein was saying. I do feel it's a very high level of like looking at things, even though they're not so good, in like say, thank you, Hashem. But I do want to mention that there are different levels of the way Hashem is challenging us. It's one thing is that the baby spilled the milk, and there's things that Chas v'Shalom people have through different situations in life that is not just spilling milk. Like, you know, some relatives Chas v'Shalom in the hospital. So you can't be saying thank you, Hashem, for. That's what I'm trying to say. You could say thank you, Hashem, for the baby spilled the milk, because Baruch Hashem, I have a baby who spills the milk. I mean, you can't get to that. You can, but you can't get to saying thank you, Hashem, for just Chas v'Shalom something happened with the child, or for someone who's struggling with. I don't know, different things. Your son, your daughter is 26 years old. She's not finding a shidduch. You're not going to say thank you, Hashem, for not finding a shidduch for my daughter. I mean. You understand what I'm trying to say?
You know, I think that talks to the point you're kind of talking to the point we mentioned earlier. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because what really, I think we could look at our own nisyanis, and there are people who go through nisyanis and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how they're doing. They're like, oh no, Baruch Hashem, I'm good. We got this, we have support. I had 2 ladies in my community that both went through Yana Machla, pretty challenging. And each one, the way they handled it, they were like, one lady's like, I never realized I had a connection to Hashem. I never felt so embraced. It taught me about my neshama. And I was like, who are you? And how are you talking about your Messiah in this way? But for her, I can't say that to her. Like, you know, now Hashem gave you an opportunity to see your community. It's going to embrace you. I would never, God forbid, speak that way, right? Chas v'Shalom. But for her, she was able to see her Messiah in that way. And I think it, you know, there's, I guess in these letters, there is room to say, like, we can reframe how we see things. Right? My husband's grandmother always say she wouldn't be feeling well. She'd be sick. She was 99 years old when she passed away, and she would have really rough days. And whenever you call, Baruch Hashem derfar, Baruch Hashem derfar. Thank God so far. Thank God so. And you're like, you know, she's struggling with either breathing or she's tired or she's stressed. And thank God so far. And I think there's something to it. It conditions us for sure neurologically. By the way, the more we do things, it creates neural pathways, and it becomes habitual, and then it actually affects us. So, you know, like we always say, or just do it. And well, I don't authentically feel there. We actually scientifically, psychologically proven, like you actually can condition yourself that way and align yourself to connect that way. I know we're really rushing over time over here, and I really don't want to skip this last letter. I'm going to try to do it as the abridged version, and then I'm staying on if anyone wants to schmooze for brain, I would love to. But those you are an hour later than me, so those who want to, you know, say good night and say Shema and head out off to bed, or take care of the rest of their large responsibilities, I want to afford everyone that right ability. But in this letter, I find so fascinating. It's something that I actually find that's a real. Someone is unmuted, and it's hold on. Okay. It's a reality that I deal with very frequently. If you remember the statistic I was saying about American college students, the general vibe is not positive on a college campus. It's just not. It's a fascinating thing. But the Rebbe's here talking to a young person, to a teenager. And the Rebbe's saying that, you know, I got your letter, and I'm looking at you gave me a clear understanding of who you are. You know, you have a background, you have education, you know, where your studies, etc. But the Rebbe says you're really coloring your light in a very dismal way. Dismal colors, really negative over here. And the Rebbe says, but in all your entire letter, and the Rebbe articulates how long the letter is, etc., You write full of expectations. I expect this from this person, and I have this person, I have this person disappointed me, right? And basically everyone owes you everything. But the Rebbe says, but I noticed you're not focusing, there's maybe a distorted reality here, because you're not focusing on you think the whole world should give you everything, right? And you're disappointed and you have expectations. But the Rebbe says, but your own perception, your own description, you realize that Hashem's been very generous to you. And then the Rebbe articulates, you're intelligent, you have wonderful mental capacities, you've had lots of opportunities, you have a wonderful education. And instead of you thinking, what you do have and what the world needs from you, you're like, the world owes me. And you're miserable. And I'm paraphrasing because the Rebbe did not say miserable, right? But really, the Rebbe says the whole way the world is created, the reason we exist, the Torah tells us who we are and why we're here, is not to receive, is to give, is to be active players. I remember years ago, there was an elder woman I was close with, and she called me and she said, I'm so she had lupus, she was really struggling, and her solution to any time she was miserable was go to the jewelry store. It was causing massive shalom bias issues. The jewelers loved her. They would roll out the red carpet. They knew she'd come from an appointment, a depressing appointment, straight to buy a diamond ring, earring, necklace, whatever. The bank account was not doing well. The husband was going mishogeh. And she ended up in therapy, and her therapist said to her, you need to leave my office and don't come back till you find a job, till you volunteer. And she called me so miserable. This therapist, who does he think he is? I pay him to help me feel better. What is it? And I said to her, I was like such a young schnook. I can't even believe I said it to this like woman who could have for sure been my mother, if not grandmother. I said to her, I kind of agree with him. Oh boy, I actually got yelled at. What? You agree with him? Da, 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 da. How could you? I'm sick, I'm this, I'm that. She hung up the phone. I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to see her again, whatever. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, about four weeks later, I get a phone call from her. And she says to me, hey, how are you? And I could tell right away in her tone. I'm like, what's going on? And she says, no, whatever. I actually just got back. I'm in the library. I'm volunteering, teaching bilingual kids who are, don't know English, and I'm reading to them, and whatever. I didn't mention like, I told you so. Obviously I would never say that, right? But what happened was she got out of her own hyper focus on her own misery. Yes, she had a very large list of very uncomfortable realities. But when she got beyond herself and she plugged into why she's here and that she can make a difference. And it's one of the things my husband and I really try to empower our students. We're on a campus with 72,000 students. The latest statistical sampling was 250 to 300 Jews. Okay, I'm not a mathematician, but that's really low, really low. And thank God we have at least 75 kids on a Shabbos, a Seder 100, 120. Even last semester during Corona, we had outdoor Shabbos. And it was like, how? And I say one thing. We want to empower our students to be givers. We want them to be ambassadors to do good. I tell them, you're sitting in the Chabad. Do you remember the first time you walked in here, how uncomfortable you felt? Great, there's 3 new people. Go greet them, go welcome them, go bring them in. Be part of the solution. You know a student who's still on campus who doesn't know they have a home, a challah, a matzah ball soup, a Jewish family, a place to catch a Torah class or a nap? What are we doing about it? I think when we empower, and this is for ourselves, when we're feeling down, think, what can I do for someone else? Again, the American way is self-care, me time, go for a massage and go for a manicure and go for a run, all important, all good. But what can I do for others? And in this letter, the Rebbe is basically saying that the only eternal truth is Torah mitzvahs. Torah mitzvahs gives us a very clear path of how to live. And what it is that this golden thread that runs through the ages, that's allowed us to exist in, this year, we should not exist as Jewish people. But the golden thread is Torah. The golden thread tells us that we're meant to talk about Basi Lagani. We're meant to partner with Hashem. We are here in Hashem's garden. We're meant to make it a gorgeous garden, not a jungle, right? We're meant to be gardeners. We're meant to tend. We're meant to nurture, plant, seed, whatever, water. Make it a beautiful garden. Bring light into the world. Bring the Shekhinah down. There's so many ways we can do for others. And so when we see ourselves that way, we can step out of our own little, talk about that pity party we talked about, when we can see ourselves that way. And I want to share a story briefly and end with this maybe. It was last year, Corona, things went, obviously our city shut down, students had gone for spring break. So we ordered 30 Seder kits to go, packaging and boxes. I thought, okay, that's going to be enough between a few professors, a few homebound people. Turns out 3 days before Pesach, 2 days before Pesach, 67 orders come in. So what am I going to tell the federal prison? No, those inmates shouldn't have a Seder. Of course, we're going to do it. And what should I tell this old professor and his wife and now their child, whatever. Suddenly my entire family, we couldn't have students volunteer, we couldn't have students help. They're all involved. Packing things. And at one point, one of my 11-year-olds is working with the 20-year-old and she starts grumbling. Will people even appreciate this? Do they realize how hard we're working? Do they realize how many hours this is taking us? Will they even have a Seder? Like, what are we doing? She was entering her own little pity party. And my gut instinct as a mother is to jump in, but I stepped back because I saw she was with her brother. It was like their moment. And her brother said to her, you're right. You're right. They may not appreciate it. They for sure have no clue how much work it is to pack every egg and put every sticker and check every lettuce and dry it and everything individually wrapped and boxed and labels, instructions, packaged, a logistical nightmare. Okay. Like as if Pesach isn't enough, this is like next level, right? Like if you reach one level of the game, you got to go to the next level. This was the next level. So he says to her, you're right. They may not appreciate it. They may not even have a kosher Seder. Who knows? He said, but isn't it good to be a giver? Isn't it good to give to others, not to be taking? And that moment, she let go. It wasn't magic. She still had to work hard. It still was uncomfortable. But I think when we can see ourselves as givers, as Rebbe said, it will change our way of life. It will change our perspective. It will shift how we see things. It will give us a reframing mindset to really focus our perspective outward, see how we could bring joy and positivity to others, and really realize that sometimes that sadness comes from entitlement. I expect this from this and this and this. Lower your expectations. You know what I'm saying? So really, we have to remember we're here for a reason. Really, if you cannot, the message is so connected to Yud Shvat, where the Rebbe really mapped out what this generation is needed for. Our generation has a tall to-do list. Every one of us has to step up and bring light to whoever we can, wherever we can, because the world's Hashem's garden. And he's entrusting us. We're partners. We're creating a dir b'tachtainim. We're creating a space that Hashem can feel comfortable. And it's not, my students say, oh, that's for you guys. You're the rabbi and you're the rabbits and that's your, I'm like, no, not for us. There's so many students, they see me in a sheitel, my husband in a beard, they're running the other direction. You, Sammy, Mia, they're not going to ignore you. So you reach out to them, you bring them in. And I think that the more we see ourselves that way, the more we look at our young children that way, that the world needs them and we can empower them with this message. If our teenagers could feel that the world is desperately relying on them to bring light into the world, then it shifts the way we see ourselves, them, and then where's time for sadness? You're so busy doing good, right? Where's time for, what all this overwhelm is? So I really think that ultimately the tools that we could talk about, and I'm happy to stay on if anyone needs to. I know this one a little longer, but there's so many beautiful things here that ultimately when we reframe our attitude, okay? And when we express verbally gratitude, we truly trust in Hashem and we work on inner joy. Like it should be real, authentic inner joy. And that opens the pipelines for brachos. And we really focus on doing for others. You know what? Life is different. And these are really powerful tools from only 4 letters. Can you imagine if we start getting in the habit of studying these letters regularly? There's apps for that. There was a link to go to Vechom and /Igris. There's so much more that we can do to focus on positivity. You know what? We all need it. We all need a little more positivity. And if we could strengthen ourselves with positivity, then we could be positive energy for others also. And I think we can't leave it to someone else. Each one of us, when the Rebbe was coming, Rebbe said, I'm not going to make this easy. I'm not like one of these other Rebbes that I'm going to do things. And then, no, roll up your sleeves, go Mivtzayim, reach out to fellow Yidden, look at people differently, see the world with positivity, look at Avos Yisrael. The way the Rebbe looked at the hippies in the 60s, the rest of the world these people. And the Rebbe was like, what do you mean? Energy, power of youth. They're frustrated with status quo. Let's harness that energy. Let's maximize that. The way the Rebbe looked at children with special needs. It wasn't like a burden on society. And this was before it was trending and politically correct. So I think we have such a wealth to really, really tap in. And ultimately, really the theme, the thread that follows through all these letters is the more we learn, the more that affects our positivity and the way we go through life. So, I want to say l'chaim, and I'm not staying on if anyone wants to schmooze, discuss, ask questions. I'm not running anywhere. It's a farbrengen. But I want to say l'chaim to each and every one of us in our own lives. I feel like we could hang up from a farbrengen, and we could hang up from a farbrengen and decide that we're, this was inspiring or that was a cute story, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, what can it mean for me on a Tuesday afternoon when I'm, late for carpool, food just burned, I just had a fight with someone, I don't know. Think of whatever's going on in your average Tuesday. So hopefully each of these letters give us some practical tools that we could draw into our lives in a real tachlistic way, because really there was a reason the Rebbe wanted these letters documented. They're a treasure trove for us. So l'chaim to tapping in and strengthening ourselves. The more as women we strengthen ourselves, the more it oozes outward, right? When we're in a bad mood, we share that with everyone around us. When we focus on positivity and bitachon and emunah, we also share that with others. We exude it. So l'chaim, ladies. If anyone wants to stay on, ask questions. I did see there were some questions. Tova, I'm not sure if you want to. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
I thought I was unmuted. I'm sorry. So someone is asking if anyone knows if there's an app to learn the Igros in English.
I actually am sure there is, but there, yes, someone just responded.
So Mushki Silverstein, if you could just type it in the chat box.
I just did.
Awesome.
It's actually,
thank you.
It's just, but I don't know if you could just read any letter. This is where
I think it's like automatic, right? It just gives you, it's not randomized, but there is.
Right. So it's a little different.
It's not by topic, so you can't.
Right.
I think there's also such a wealth, what I would say, I know in the book Positivity Bias, which I just did as a book club with some of my ladies, they in there's so many letters and stories. So if you find a book or a subject that really speaks to you, I would find there's no shortage. And there's letters in Igros too, in English available everywhere. Go on, you know what I mean? Thank God we're living in an era where there's a lot out there. Baruch Hashem. Anyone else want to share anything or thoughts or? Yeah, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
And when you unmute yourself, if you don't want to introduce yourself so we know who's speaking, I'm sorry.
This is Sapara Pollock.
It's so good to see you.
How are you? So first of all, thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. And I just wanted to say you were the best babysitter my children ever had. So thank you for that as well, when you were quite young. So I was also thinking what's really helpful, one of the things that you also alluded to when you're talking about being, victimized and feeling like a victim, is that it's really helpful when you reframe things and you can work on yourself and change yourself tremendously. And I think that one of the ways you can do is with Dan Lefaf's. And I know, especially living in Monsey, you're late for work and there's a school bus and the children are walking so incredibly slow and you're looking at your watch and they're not moving, and then they go 3 houses and then they stop again. So the frustration that you feel, you can reframe it and say, wow, look at this. Look what we have created. Look at Monsey with all the kindergarten that are going to school after what went on. Like, how magnificent is this? How much
continuity of the Jewish people.
Hashem to be so happy that the school buses are bursting with kids. Or if somebody, let's say you're walking and somebody gets too close to you with their car, instead of thinking like, what are you, an idiot? Like, how do we drive? Which is usual reaction when you feel, somebody's cut you off. So the real reality is to say, you know what, maybe this guy just heard really bad news. Maybe his wife, heard something terrible about his family. And he's going very quickly to someplace. So, just to have the attitude of just be safe. And not take it in as, a negativity, because in the end, he's gone. You're the one who's carrying it on your shoulder with a chip.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, first of all, it's Dan Chafschus as a tool we have that Torah teaches us. And in every single one of the letters, there was like, plug into Torah, tap into Torah, learn Chassidus. Because the more we do, it's a reminder. And I think what you're saying is at the end of the day, that negative energy stays within you. That person kept walking. Those kids went into the house and played ball. You're the one who's stuck with that toxicity. So I do agree with you so strongly that reframing things, positive reframing. How can I look at this situation differently?
And you can do it. It takes practice, but you can do it.
Yeah, and you know, it's like anything else, any other skill you want to get better at, there's no shortcut. You just have to do it. Yeah. And in the beginning, it doesn't feel, authentic. It feels a little like I'm a faker, but the more you do it, the more it becomes you. So I really love that. Thank you. And yes, I did enjoy babysitting your kids. It was a while ago, but yes.
Yes.
Anyone else want to jump in and share any thoughts or ideas, or maybe a practical way that you can do this in your life?
I just wanted to add something. It's our Holzberg.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of, since I'm a teacher, and I'm always like redirecting to chinuch, and I'm thinking about what we can take for the chinuch of our children from your small lecture. It was beautiful and very little, but the last thing you said was being a giver. And I think that in these years, that when the world is Baruch Hashem, like we have so much shefa, and so, and children just have to ask, and they already have everything. Teaching them to be givers is an amazing tool for their own happiness.
Yes.
And when we know and trust the children that they have the ability to become givers, we're going to really have a much happier children in our own house, and especially in the Jewish nation. This is the Dar of Mashiach. This is the children that we are raising. So it was beautiful, incredible, and I really enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for translating that into a real practical takeaway. And I could not agree with you more. When we have discussions at times where my kids do feel, there's no kosher ice cream for miles. When they go into Monsey to like a kosher supermarket, they're like, wait, everything here is kosher. It's like the concept is so mind-boggling, right? Because that's not our reality, right? And so I think that even when they're fetching because they don't have friends, or because life is not simple when you're the only kid within 100 miles wearing a yarmulke, or the only girl your age and your friends are all 18, 19, and 20, and college students that are, not known notoriously for their selflessness and sensitivity for others. We'll keep it that way. But, and sometimes it's not simple for them. And sometimes they want to have a pity party. Sometimes I remember once my kids told me they realized they were at their cousin in Florida, and they realized she had friends on Thursday and Friday and Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos and Sunday. And they came to me, all three of them, it was triplets. They ganged up on me and they said, I think there were 7 or 8, and they're 7. And they said, it's not fair. I said, what do you mean it's not fair? Where we live, we have no friends, Okay, so I said, well, why do we live there? So one says, well, we're on shluchas. And the other said, well, our cousins are in shluchas in Houston and they have friends. I said, well, what would happen if we weren't live there? And the other one says, oh, someone else could live there. There's tons of people who want to go on shluchas. Nothing I was saying going to solve the problem. And I was outnumbered. It was 3-1. My husband wasn't in town. So I said to the kids, I said, I hear you, we'll talk. And they really were, it was real frustration. And I remember they came back to me a few days later. They said, we had a meeting. I said, oh, you had a meeting? What was the meeting? They said, we had a meeting and we decided we want to go to public school. Now, my reaction, I tried to play it calm and cool, right? Because you're supposed to not react. Those of us in chinuch, keep a poker face. Let's stay calm. So I was like, oh, public school. And I'm trying to play it really calm. And the kid says, no, don't worry, Mom. A Jewish public school. I said, okay, what's a Jewish public school? So they said, a Jewish school that's open to the public. What they wanted was they wanted a classroom and they wanted desks. So what I really feel like is I want my kids to realize that even with all the sacrifice and the difficulties and the challenges of living where we live, at the end of the day, I always tell them every single day you go to bed, you're giving to others. And that's a really good way to live life. So l'chaim to us that we should be able to be givers, and we have to be creative. We got to keep our kids productive and doing and making a difference. And it's a message that every single time I bring with teenagers, I always tell them, I said, guys, the world needs you. Like we actually legit need you. Gullus is not going to end with us adults alone. You are the ones who are going to get us out of Gullus. So we need you to step up to that. And I think that we can really, really see children that way. see ourselves that way, which is a little more work, but and then together we really could end Gullus. It's definitely a possibility, right? It's definitely a goal, and I think it's what the Rebbe mapped out right away. This is Darashvi. There's a goal. We got to get out of Gullus, so it takes all of us stepping up in our own way and bringing light wherever we are. From what I understand, Monsey also needs light. There's plenty good to do there too, right? So l'chaim, ladies. Anyone else want to share anything, any thoughts or ideas? I'm happy to hear. I love listening. If there's nothing else, we could say goodnight. That's also possible.
I think everyone is just shy.
Oh, but like, I could like shut my camera if it makes someone feel better. I could go put on a tichel if it makes someone feel better. I don't mind.
Yeah, everyone keeps posting. Thank you so much for a beautiful night. That's basically what the messages keep popping up. Thank you for arranging. Thank you for joining. So
it was an honor and a privilege. And it was, I think for me, the first time I had my mother on one of my classes. So that's a real treat. And my mother, my sister-in-law here. So I don't worry, I don't feel any pressure, but it's great to join together, to learn together. And may we continue to strengthen each other and join together with Mashiach. We're certainly all ready. Like Gullus, we're done with it. I think the whole world is now like Mashiach ready. Like this, if this didn't teach people, like we're over it, we're ready.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing, and I think you said the right word on the right time. Because it's just giving us koyach and to go ahead in this challenging time.
Yes.
Challenging for everyone. And I think you just found the right letters and it just gives us koyach to continue to go on in life. To bring Mashiach, like you said.
Amen.
Yasher koyach. Yasher koyach.
It was absolute pleasure. Thank you for giving me the honor to spend some time with you lovely ladies. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Good night.
Thank you, Manya.
Thank you.